In the past week alone, we've learned 450 more American troops will be sent overseas to fight in both Syria and Iraq. My next guest, retired Army Colonel Andrew Bacevich, argues the U.S. is addicted to war in its politics and culture. His new book, America's War for the Greater Middle East, A Military History, chronicles our nation's increased military buildup in the region over the past 4 decades, and a record of very little success. Andrew Bacevich joins me now. Good to see you yet again.
Thank you.
450 new troops committed by the president last week to Iraq and Syria. Is this just a continuation of a failed policy and endless wars?
Well, in my judgment, it is. I mean, I think you made the key point is that this military enterprise that we began back in 1980 is now over 3.5 decades old. We're not winning. It doesn't seem to me that anybody in Washington has any real concrete idea how we might win. And in many respects, I think you can make the argument that our military efforts have made things worse, not better.
You know, you're a really thoughtful, smart guy. There are a lot of really thoughtful, smart guys in military hierarchy. The president, I would include in that category. How do you know this and they are oblivious to it? Is it because they can't conceive of another course? Is it an addiction to this? Why are they proceeding a course that you are convinced is so undercut by a look at history?
Well, I suspect many of them, many of the senior people, civilians and military, understand that this is a failing enterprise.
So why do they keep doing it?
Well, you know, the president in this, the famous article by Jeffrey Goldberg in The Atlantic, and the president was quoted making a very disdainful reference to what he called the Washington playbook. And that is that the establishment has a set of expectations that regardless of what the problem is, you know, there's a set of 3 or 4 options that you choose from, and that the playbook, in a sense, imprisons people who might actually know better, but can't choose a different course.
And we should be clear: leaders in both parties use the same playbook. This is not a partisan criticism that you're
emphatically. I mean, one of the points of the book is to emphasize the extent to which this misguided war has been, from the outset, a bipartisan project. It's a bipartisan project today. Regardless of who wins in November, the war will continue.
So what's the Bacevich playbook that they should be reading from prospectively rather than the one they do read from?
Well, I mean, I think step number 1 is to take stock of the war. I mean, to ask the basic question, how are we doing? And if the answer is not well, there is no prospect of success, then step 1 is acknowledge that there is no military solution that the United States can engineer, and therefore be open to radically different approaches to policy.
Well, you know what the first response is going to be. Well, there's no military solution to ISIS. What's the alternative to them?
There may be a military solution to ISIS. I would argue strongly that it's a military solution that ought to be imposed by others. See, the expectation has been from the outset that somehow or other the adroit use of American military power is going to fix things. Well, it hasn't. I would argue that the use of military power by those in the region who actually are far more threatened by ISIS than we are, that it is the efforts of Saudi Arabia and Iran and Iraq and Egypt and Turkey that can solve the problem. You might respond, yeah, but those countries hate each other. And I would respond by saying, maybe they do, but they are facing a transcendent common threat that they need to recognize and deal with.
And the reason they don't deal with it is because we're essentially enabling their bad behavior because we fill in the gaps. Is that where it is?
Correct.
You know, when I spoke to you the other day on the radio, Andrew Bacevich, you were saying that essentially the lead candidates don't get it, and then maybe Bernie Sanders, who hasn't spoken much on the issue, may have a better sense. But Donald Trump said today in his foreign policy speech from a teleprompter, war and aggression will not be my first instinct. Is there not a thread of the Trump foreign policy, such as it is, that is taken from your playbook?
Well, I'm sure it's not taken from my playbook.
Well, I mean, you know what I mean, the concept.
But I think the problem here is that regardless of the issue, Trump's all over the place. I haven't read the text of the speech. I've read press reports. And it seems that the theme that he's now trotting out is America first, meaning elect me, and my approach to foreign policy will privilege the well-being of the United States, the prosperity. But I haven't heard him say that that's going to lead to some radically different approach to dealing with the Middle East.
So 30 seconds left. Somebody takes office in January. What's the first thing he or she should do to advance a different kind of policy in the Middle East?
Well, my fellow Americans, I understand that American military power has real limits. I understand that the enterprise that we have been engaged in for the last 3.5 decades is not making things better.
So I am going to do what?
I am going to begin the process of demilitarizing U.S. policy and take a more creative and different approach.
Andrew Bacevich, your book is terrific. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.